here's the other thing. There's a push and pull there because you want, and I've talked about this before, but you want to spend as much time as you can with the kids, but also they're getting older. They're prepping to leave and be independent. So they're pushing back. Like, it's also their senior year. And they're not only the last year with them, like living full time under your roof, but also the last year of them in school with all their friends. So you also have to allow space for them to go and be with their friends and do their things. And more and more and more of that happens senior year, even more than any other year. I feel like I went to see my kids more, but I saw them less.
I remember you telling me that, and you kind of prepped me for that, even going into junior year and going into this summer. And
did you find
that? Yeah, and I've seen that. And I remember, I mean, this isn't exactly the same, but I feel like this sense where when there are big changes coming, there are two sides of preparation. There's mom and there's child, right? They're, like you said, but they're also, as much as they're preparing themselves, they're preparing you, whether inadvertently or not,
right?
Or consciously.
They don't know they're doing it.
They don't really know they're doing it, but they're pulling away more. And what happens is it's preparing you for them to be gone. And I mean, that started for us even last summer, where we kind of felt like lots of weekends and during the week we were empty nesting to a certain extent because she's the last one that we have in the house, you know. But there's something cool about that. I just think, like, from a philosophical place, like that's really neat, like how it just life happens that way, right? It's just this like dance, and they're preparing to leave, but they're also preparing you, and you're preparing for them to go, and you've done all this work over the last 18 years. So.
And to your point, to that dance piece, it's like you're preparing each other.
You're right.
Right? And it can be, if you hopefully have a good relationship with your kid and you trust them and all of those things, then, you know, that dance will be a beautiful one. You'll be able to let go and watch them thrive. And that, you know, the back and forth of that is really special.
Yeah. So on the other side of that, I mean, it is still an opportunity as long as they are in your house. You don't have to preach to them. You don't have to give them a whole, you know, spiel, but it is an opportunity to use discussions or things as they come up to still teach them.
For sure.
So, right. I just jotted that down as a note for me to remember that, like, as long as you have that open door and they're still learning, don't think the work is done, I guess.
Yes.
And I don't think many of us would take that for granted, but I think at this stage, it could be a little easier and be like, oh, they probably know the difference.
Yes.
You know, instead of actually saying, all right, let's debrief this.
Right.
What just happened? Let's talk about that. Because if that were happen in the real world, here's what would happen, or when you go away and so forth.
And you know what? That's a good point. And I've shared this before, but I had particular moments when Anthony was going. That was 2 years ago. It was the first one of like pushing, trying to like feeling the sense of I've got to teach him everything because he's leaving, and pushing things on him that I probably should have started way early on, and then us fighting. So I think to an extent you want to continue the teaching and the prepping them with the skills, but also don't go so overboard that because I made that mistake of like, you're doing your laundry from now on and you're going to make like it's going to be done at a certain time and this has to be done in your room. Yeah. So I was like, I need to prepare him for living by himself and picking up. And that I was like, that ship had sailed. I should have started that. If I was going to set that stage, it shouldn't have been the last year he was in my house.
Yep.
So that's
because you want to enjoy each other as well, not make it a fight.
So. Yeah, so that's a fine line. But I even see like Andrew now is my middle one, how much growth he's had just with little things of us teaching him or pushing him to do more things on his own than he had. And even if it was something as simple as like taking the car to get inspected, or, you know, scheduling your own appointments now, or taking your own things to the post office or whatever. Just to try to prep him for he's going to have to be doing these things on his own. And then all, you know, he's grew so much his senior year in those ways of just being more independent and being more sure of himself because we pushed him to do them.
Yeah. Speaking of Andrew, you know, he's accepted to this awesome university and he's excited and he's going in August, but coming off of this year of applications and essays and
I was going to just
all of that. Yeah. Talk to us about that. Like, because I'm sure there's kids that maybe have some trepidation and like, because they're scared, they maybe put things off. I'm not saying that was Andrew, but like, what if you have a kid that would do that? How much do you help them through that process? Like how, because you also need them to do this. This is adult time now. right?
Yes. Yeah, so for Andrew, for both of my boys, we were fortunate enough for them to be at a school where they had people that worked at the school whose sole job was to college counsel.
Yeah.
So they walked them through the process, and our boys were done with most of the Common App and their essays, rough drafts, by the end of the summer.
That's great.
So when they went into the fall of senior year, pretty much everything was done except for loose ends and tie-ups. So, but that's not,
Which is
I don't,
great because
it is
they
great.
can enjoy their year.
Yes, and it's, they're still working on it. It's not like, and then you'll know this if you don't already. Each school, like, so there's the Common App and there's an essay, but then each school might have their own essay. So there might be other things depending on where you're applying. But to that end, I would say the first thing I would say is if your school doesn't offer good counseling or help, and you have the means, get somebody to intervene there, because the last thing you want to do is be fighting with your kid to get this stuff done that last year. So that's huge. I don't think everybody that I've ever talked to that invested in that has spoken so highly of having that guidance and just knowing how to navigate the Common App and the applications. But beyond that, you will find that, and I saw this with Andrew, talk to your kids and continue to talk to them and keep the lines of communication open beyond like, did you get this done? Did you do that? Did you send that in? I'm talking more like, how are you feeling? How are you keeping up? Because what I didn't know and what you will find is it's a very stressful time. It's very exciting because they're doing all these fun things, but it's very, very stressful because they're applying to these schools. They don't know where they're going. They have their hopes for certain schools that they want to get into, and all their friends are doing the same. And it's really like, I didn't realize, I think I've shared with you that I just thought for like, from when we went back to school till I'll say like March, that Andrew was just the typical, you hear like kids get older and the year before college, they push back and they just kind of become a-holes, but they come back around because they're just getting their independence. I was like, wow, he's like a total like, what's wrong? Like I had to just like distance myself a little bit because he was just on edge. Well, come to find out, it was all anxiety around the college process. And I didn't know because I didn't check in enough. And as soon as he was settled on where he was going, it was like a
weight
switch flipped. And he was a different kid. And we saw him more. He was out of his room more. He was hanging out more. So definitely check in and don't discount how stressful that is for the kids. So we can talk a lot about all the fun things like the senior days and the senior banquets and the graduation coming up and the sporting events and all the fun that's to be had. But also there's an underlying amount of stress for them, even if they're not going to college, just trying to figure out what's coming next.
Yeah, that's great advice.